Welcome to the very late fall garden. I have been doing a lot of traveling this year. We just got back, so there is a lot of catch up to be done in the garden, but I kind of feel like that's really the case in the end of the garden season anyways, especially when you're trying to put up as much food as possible from it. Like, it's just a mad dash no matter what to get everything up before the weather turns, before crops are done, etc. So we have not had, surprisingly, our first frost yet. We were 36 degrees Fahrenheit last week, but then we've kind of warmed up a little bit, and so our overnight lows have been like more in the 40s. So for most of the warm weather vegetables, you're not going to get a ton of growth once you're that cool at night, especially like with tomatoes and stuff. Not for new growth in food production, but what's unripe will still ripen and kind of just gets that last little bit. It's basically ripening what's ever close and getting it to the finish line. However, this year, my acorn squash, those plants produced earlier, which was really interesting. The acorn squash produced much earlier than my Delicata and butternut winter squash, and so it also died back. So I left everything out here acorn squash wise just until the plants were fully dead. And now, like, I mean, there's a couple, like, this one's trying to still be alive, but I know within a week we're gonna have the frost, and because these are all mainly dead, it's time to go ahead and harvest these and get them to curing. Now this one, like, you can see, like, this has already started to dry. Like, this one is literally just started to cure out here in the field for me. But some of these still have a little bit of green stem, like this one does. So you can see it's kind of starting. I've actually got a little bit of mildew in there, so I'll break that part off. I don't need that long of a stem, but you do want to leave the stems on because it's going to help their shelf life if it's not something you're harvesting and planning on eating right away. And I have a whole video on actually curing squash for long-term storage that goes into more detail on that. So we'll make sure that that is in the video description and you can go and check that out. But I need to get all of these harvested. It's supposed to rain tomorrow. It rained a little bit overnight, but then we ended up clearing off, and like today is dry, which is perfect. But I know our rainy season is delayed a little bit. So now is the time to get all of these up before they get saturated by the rain. Oh, now see, we had a little bit of rodent damage to this one, but none on this side. So I can cut this one open. It's not going to store, obviously, but we can cut this half open. This half I can give to the ducks and the chickens, and then I can bake this other half. So that will be for an immediate use. Oh, timer went off when one is multitasking and we've got homemade hamburger and hot dog buns rising. I always have my timer. So back in the house to go and get those in the oven, and then I'll come out and finish on harvesting these while that's baking. I don't know, sometimes technology can help you get more done. Oh, whew, I'm gonna get a bicep workout with this one. So I'm gonna go ahead and move these to our back porch for today, and then I'll just keep an eye. I'll probably have to move them inside by our fireplace once the rain hits tomorrow. When we start to get cold, we just simply won't have the outdoor temps to cure these. We have had a very interesting zucchini plant this year. This is a zucchini that thinks it's a milk-fed pumpkin. This has been the biggest zucchini producing plant that I have ever had. Almost all of them, if I miss them off of this plant, get to this size. I've never had a zucchini plant that will grow them. And when I get into these, there's big seeds inside, but it's surprisingly not woody. Like, there's just a ton of flesh on them. So I don't know if this is just like a breeding selection and we just got an odd anomaly, because usually they'll grow really long like baseball bats, but they'll be really like weird texture inside. So these have been really interesting and surprising. And the ducks and the chickens have been loving them. So I typically I've got some smaller ones that need to be harvested still. So we've been using those And if you're looking at zucchini harvest and how to preserve the harvest, we do have a video on that. Make sure and link to it for you. But I have so many zucchini. I'm not really concerned with keeping these ones, but they make phenomenal livestock feed. So for this variety, I think I may try saving a few of the seeds. I do have some other zucchini summer squash that are different varieties. This one was supposed to be a black beauty, but I think it must have crossed with something somewhere. So knowing that I did not hand pollinate these and I've got other zucchini variety, I don't know what this will grow back to, but I'm tempted to seed sage some of them just for more of a livestock variety. So this guy is so big. I mean, look at this thing, that I think I'm gonna harvest it and I'm gonna let it cure and use it for chicken feed into the winter months. Because it's got this thicker rind, I actually think I could get it to cure similar to a winter squash. I don't know, we're just gonna do an experiment and see what happens. Regardless, if I see it start to turn like it's not gonna last, then I'll just take it out to the chickens and they'll just get to eat it a little bit earlier. But I've got two that are super big like this, so I'm gonna do a bit of an experiment. We'll see how it works. I do have my Delicata winter squash, but these vines, you can see, like I still have leaves and quite a bit of green. And in my experience, they do not continue to ripen off the vine. So I'm gonna leave these Delicata on so that they can just get more flavor and continue to ripen right until we have our first frost, which will probably be next week, but I'm just gonna give them every last little bit that I can because the flavor is just that much improved. Now over here, I think this is the latest that I've ever had my pepper harvest. At the time of this recording, we're in mid-October. We had a oddly cool start to our summer. And all of my warm weather plants, it put them back by about 4 weeks. So I feel like even though we're in the middle of October right now, this is actually what my harvest normally looks like in September. But it's actually been kind of a blessing because I was gone from home almost all of September. So it's actually been really good. However, I'm not going to get as big of a pepper harvest as normal just because they didn't really start to ripen and form really until like August. They were just babies. And so that means that I'm getting cut short because I actually have quite a few little ones that are you can tell these were just blossoms and they've pollinated, but there's no way that these are going to form because our overnight temps are too low. Some of the shorter ones that look like they've got like ones that are almost harvest size, I might try to use our cold frame on just to see if I can give them a couple like extra 2 weeks. But I don't know. I don't know that it'll do any good. So I'm just going to be grateful for what I've got and we're going to take those. But it's been later for the tomatoes, later for the peppers, and even later for our green beans. Like everything has just been extended, which is a blessing. But it also feels really weird to be doing this in the middle of October. So we're going to get on to all the ones that are ripe though and harvest these guys, take them inside, get them fermenting. Last year, my goal was to get a year's worth of fermented hot sauce from our own pepper plants to take us through an entire year for my family. And we succeeded. We just got through the last bottle of that last week. So I'm hoping I have enough of the pepper harvest this year that we actually grew enough to do the exact same thing. If you want to learn how to do fermented peppers and make amazing fermented hot sauce, make sure that you check those blog posts out that are in the video description. So here is my first picking of our hot peppers. Being so only have a week or so more, I'm gonna go ahead and get these guys fermenting, and then whatever's green, I'm gonna leave, let it get as ripe as possible in the next week, and then I'll just pick everything else right before our first frost and ferment that regardless if it's fully ripe or not. So I'm gonna take these in and get those going. But I also have our dried bean, which is our seed bean. And again, like this is super late, but I was trying to let these get dried as much as possible on the vine. So these were our green beans, but you let them go to seed and they can be your seed or they act as both. But this would be your bean seed that you would plant for next year. If you have to let it finish drying, it's not quite full dry enough for storage. Or it's just a dried bean. So we use these as you would kind of like a white or a navy bean. But I was trying to let them get fully mature because if you're seed saving or using them as a dried bean, you obviously want the bean inside the pod to be the biggest and as mature as possible when it comes to seed saving. So we've been letting these go, but as you can tell, we haven't had a frost. However, the vines are pretty much done. I mean, they're definitely dying back and drying, but they're dying back. And knowing that we had rain last night, so these are a little damp. I was just letting them get as dry as possible in the sun today, knowing that I have more rain coming tonight. So letting these dry out as much as possible today. And then I'm just gonna have to pick these regardless if they've gotten fully dry on the vine. And then we move them inside and start to shell them out. But I keep them by our wood stove when they're a little bit damp like this, because I can't get them shelled out fast enough before they could potentially start to mildew and ruin. So we just have some of those big plastic totes that have all of the holes in them so that there's plenty of airflow. And we'll let them stay there for a week or two until they're fully dry. And then they'll be fine. And then I can just shell them out as we have time in the evening and the winter months. But right now, with full-on harvest coming on, I don't have the time to do that because I'm still preserving everything else. So we'll just pick these and let the wood stove do its job.